Hello, everybody. This is Dom from Upstate Supernatural, and I'd like to welcome everybody in to another episode of Interview the Ghost Hunter. And we have a great guest this week. This is actually a gentleman I've gotten to talk to a little bit, and he's very interesting with all the spirit box techniques out there, and I thought he'd be a great guest. He's also an investigator as well. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and invite Greg into this.
Hello.
And Greg, if I can just start out, I'll go ahead and ask the first question, which is if you can tell us your name and the group that you work with.
My name is Greg Bakum, and I am founder and lead investigator for Minnesota GhostBox.
Okay, and then the next question, about how long have you been investigating within the paranormal?
I've been doing it for about 5 years, and GhostBox itself we've had around as an organization of sorts probably for about 4 years or so.
Very cool. And what caused you to become interested in the field of ghost hunting? What kind of drew you into the field?
It's odd because for so long I really had no interest in it whatsoever. I remember seeing a show back in the late 1990s. I was just watching with a friend, and it was like one of those paranormal series that investigations, which kind of was before this new enlightenment of stuff like ghost hunters and ghost adventures, stuff like that. And I remember that there is this big guy who they buried in a casket, and they buried him underground, and he had like cameras in this casket, and he was just like, I don't know, he's just buried alive trying to get like spirit responses and stuff. And I thought to myself, God, this is horrible. And then like the dirt collapsed the coffin, and he's like screaming for his life and stuff. I'm like, well, what's the point of this? This is not very good at all. Jump ahead a few years, I started watching some of the shows. I thought, well, this is interesting. Like the technology had moved ahead quite a bit by that point, and you got to start seeing stuff that I've never seen before, like a spirit box, stuff like that. So I started to get interested, and then probably about 5 years ago, I started to have dreams about doing paranormal investigating. And these dreams would happen every night, every single night. I would be dreaming about doing a paranormal investigation, which was pretty crazy. The dreams were never scary. It was just me out there doing a paranormal investigation. It was just driving me. I just had to do it. Finally, I gave in, started doing it, and I just fell in love with it. Kind of started off as my own kind of rogue sort of investigator, I guess. Go to places and try to get spirit box communication. Went to a couple old buildings in downtown Minneapolis with a friend, and we got some stuff. But ultimately, I decided I wanted to turn this into something a little bit like more and a little bit real. So that's what I ended up doing this. Putting GhostBox together and getting other people involved.
Very cool, very cool. And all of us have some interesting stories. Is there a particular story that really kind of sticks in your head that you'd like to share?
Like of investigation itself?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people out in the field, they're always looking for that scary story or the crazy story.
Mm-hmm.
I'm more or less kind of barring out to, has there been a fascinating story from your investigations that just really sticks in your head?
Yeah, there's a couple. It's interesting. I've kind of figured a question like this would come up, and I kind of break it into two realms. One of them is that you have this sort of you have something scary happening because you know what you're doing, but things kind of go amiss a little bit, and then you have this other side to it, which is basically you're with people, you don't really know what you're doing, and apparently they don't really know what they're doing, and things go pear-shaped really quickly. And that's actually what ended up happening was I went down to the Villisca Axe murder house and went with people who contaminated the investigation by bringing haunted dolls down there with them, which at that time I was just like, oh, sure, whatever. But then it got scary. And basically what ended up happening is what turned out to be like I was just coming along to just to kind of come along, see how it works. I wasn't really going to get involved with the investigation. Next thing I know, I felt like any kind of negative energy that was in that house was geared towards me. They liked my energy. And then I ended up coming home with an attachment. And what ends up happening is that we have this doll, which is it's pretty crazy, actually. We went to the person who led the investigation. We went to her house the week before the investigation just to kind of go over a game plan. And what ends up happening is that we start talking and stuff, and she hands me a doll, and she's just like, well, this is one of the dolls that have some energy attached to it. This one has the negative energy attached to it. And I swear, I'm not kidding, the way I see it is that it had those lazy eyes. It blinked at me at that point. And I mean, that's obviously like, you can't really, confirm that that's really the doll energy or whatnot. But ever since that point, I had this really horrible feeling with me. So we bring this doll down to Villisca, and that's where I think a lot of the activity came from, was from this doll. We had a medium with us, and we're talking about it, and we got this spirit name, Cassandra. I was like, well, there's no Cassandra at Villisca. I'm not sure. Is she visiting or whatnot? Suddenly it's like, oh, yeah, well, that's the doll, isn't it? And we're like, yeah, probably is. And so at that point, the medium, Justin, he looks at me, and he's like, she likes your energy. Don't ever touch that doll again. And that was enough. And we ended up using the doll in certain areas. And the leader of the group, she's like, can you grab the doll? I'm like, no, I'm not going to touch that thing. I was told by a medium, don't touch it. And sure enough, I felt, from that point on, I felt very oppressed for about 2 months afterwards. There was a lot of stuff that happened in that house, but that was one that really sticks out. And we drive back up to Minneapolis because Villisca is probably about, I think it's like 5 hours from Minneapolis, something like that, maybe 6. And so we drive back up, and I'm the one driving this car, and the tire blows out. And that's scary on its own. I mean, that happens, but when you're already on heightened alert, it's frightening. It's absolutely frightening. So we get back, we all carpooled. So my car was like in a parking lot. Get back to my car, open up the car, and it's the sweetest smell of perfume I've ever experienced. And my car doesn't have any perfume, and it doesn't even have any like air scent things in there or any of that kind of stuff. So suddenly it's like, what is going on here? And became frightening. And that stayed with me for about, like I said, 2 months. And it really affected my mood and affected the people around me too.
Very, very fascinating story. And I know a few other individuals have been to Villisca, and they've talked about crazy experiences there as well.
It's funny about Villisca because what you get is either people are going to be like, yeah, stuff happened there, or no, nothing happened there at all. Why did you get something? Because we didn't get any of that. And the thing about Villisca is that you get there, and really the activity, because we're hoping to get there this year, and we normally get started with our investigation right away. The activity, and I've talked to a few people about it, the activity doesn't actually start till probably about 1:30 in the morning. And that's when the K2 meters start going insane. We had it set up by this doll. I have video footage of it, which I'm going to do something with this year. And it's like the K2 meter would be like in sync, doing, in sync, doing their lights. And then you'd be like, well, can you only make the right meter go? And then the left would shut off, and the right one would go by itself for however long you want. Then you'd ask, well, can you put them both back? And it would both come back on every single time. And I've never seen anything quite like it. It was absolutely insane. It was actually wonderful, but it was just kind of the hors d'oeuvres to kind of how frightening the night did become.
And then the next question I have for you is, how many investigations would you say you guys have been on?
That's a good question because we've done a ton. This last year in particular, we've had to be close to, and we've gone to a couple places multiple times, but they're different investigations, they're different things. I mean, easily, probably close to about 20. It's this summer was absolutely busy. As far as like what we did for our web series, we went to 5 distinct locations, but everything else that we did, we just, as all paranormal groups, you just want to go and keep investigating, keep trying out new gear and stuff. And so we went to a lot of places, and there's a wonderful place in St. Anthony, Maine, which is the oldest part of Minneapolis, and it's what I've always kind of thought of as like the where you kind of train a little bit, because they have tours there. I don't think they have them at the moment, but if they have them, go on them, because you go through old St. Anthony, Maine, and you go through all these buildings that have now been renovated, but there's still a lot of spirit activity down there, and it is phenomenal. It is absolutely some of the best evidence I've received has been in that area, and it's effortless. You know, the spirits get to know who you are. They get to know the guides in particular. You go down there and you have these wonderful experiences. You get these great responses. One time we found out that some of the spirits down there were being oppressed by something else, and they had asked for a Bible. And I made sure that when the next times I showed up, because I personally promised that I'd bring a Bible, and I brought one. And we ended up leaving the Bible behind. We went to this other area in St. Anthony, Maine, and we started asking questions like, were you happy that that you got a Bible and whatnot? And the response we got from the spirit box was, the Lord is our God. And it's just one of those crazy, like, intelligent responses, but you can't believe you heard that, and just suddenly the energy just ramps up, and it's fantastic.
And during an investigation, is there a certain equipment that you prefer to use more so than other styles of equipment?
Well, obviously, I'm going to be partial to a spirit box, but what we tend to use also, I mean, we use a lot of the same things that other people tend to use. We use, you know, your K2 meters. We use Mel meters. Flashlights are really good. The person who I investigate with, Nicole, she is amazing with flashlights. And the thing about flashlights is that it can go many different ways. And what works on this is that you know that it's right, because they're intelligent responses. They flash when they need to, and etc. And that's kind of cool, because that shows that they're it's actually spirits paying attention instead of just lights going on and off whenever they want to. And so I find it to be a very cool thing. We're not one of those groups that, at least as of yet, have created our own equipment where, you know, it's some idea that we're trying to figure out. I mean, I haven't really put my head around something like that. I'm not like an engineer or anything. I just want to go out there and do some basic communication. And we do have a couple ideas for some equipment, but as of yet, we haven't done anything. We've been busy with a lot of other things, and we've just been enjoying going around and investigating.
And what do you find to be the greatest part of doing an investigation? I ask this because I know certain individuals, they may like to just investigate. Others like to go through the findings, go through the footage. Mm-hmm. And I really have found that there is a separation between the two.
I think you're right. Absolutely.
What do you find to be the greatest part?
I think for myself, I think it all has to do with energy. And what I mean by that is, if we're in a room and we start getting a conversation going with the spirit box, and we've done one of the last ones I had that was absolutely electrifying was at this place once again in St. Anthony, Maine, called the Soap Factory. I did it in December, and we were just having a back and forth conversation with somebody down there in the basement of this very old building, very dark, very crazy, and we're just having this conversation, and the electricity coming from that is wonderful. It just feels like that you're doing something that very few other people have the opportunity to do. On the other side of it, going through evidence can be laborious, but you have to do it if you want to actually verify what you've received. But then once you start getting those same communications, once you start hearing the stuff that you heard live, and you're actually hearing it and you're recording, that is also pretty crazy. That's pretty awesome, actually. And so we've been very excited about that. And there's been times, like we just did back in October, we did a couple investigations of the Palmer House, and that's going to be our first episode for the web series. And we did that, and both times I was there, I came back and listened to recordings, and it's not a spirit box. And you and I, Dominic, were talking about this prior to going on the air. I don't get a lot of EVPs. I just don't personally. But I got one amazing EVP down in what they call the Snowman Room, which I think I'm biased here, but I think it's one of the best EVPs I've ever heard. And then another one, the day of the actual investigation, when we were actually shooting, and we were down in the basement again, and I was talking to spirits like, we don't mean you any harm, and I hear this small child's voice just simply says, "Go away," which if I had a dollar for every time spirit has told me to go away, I'd actually have quite a bit, to be honest.
All right, and then the next question I had for you, to any new people that might be interested within the field, are there any tips that you may be able to give to them if they're interested in joining the field?
I think, in my humble opinion, that one of the things that, I started doing this, like I said, by myself, and I slowly got immersed in the culture. And I started with the people from Minnesota, who are some of the most amazing paranormal teams I've ever seen. I am so lucky to be like a part of these groups that they look at me as a peer. I mean, it's been very gratifying. But once I started to look beyond Minnesota, I started to feel like that there's a lot of people who, in my opinion, are into it more for themselves than for the investigating of the paranormal. And, you see a lot of people who, I friend a lot of people on Facebook. I do feel networking is very important, but all it is a lot of people who are posting selfies of themselves, they're branding themselves, which obviously I'm doing the same thing to a certain degree. I'm not posting selfies, though. I mean, you can see me now. You'd see why I don't do that. And to me, I feel like once you start making it about yourself, then you start losing the thread. You start making it so it's no longer what, in my opinion, what it should be about. And I think if you're going to get into it, I think you have to understand. I think you really have to have a conversation with yourself. Why is it do you want to do it? Is it because you're looking at it on TV and you're like, oh, I want to go in and provoke spirits, and I want to yell at them, and I want, and I want fame for doing it? Or do you want to go in there because you want to do communication? You want to, I'm not going to be vain enough to say that I move forward the field, but I'm certainly taking part in the field. I'm certainly doing something that I can actually look back and say, I feel like my evidence stands up to just about anyone else's. And that to me is exciting. I'm happy about that. So, that would be my advice, is like, think about why you're doing it. With our group, we have a motto that I always say, this isn't our story, this is their story. And that basically means that they in that motto is the spirits that we're going to investigate, or the people who live or take part in the lives of what happens before we get there and after we leave. It's not about us. It's not about Nicole. It's not about myself. And if it starts moving that direction, I get embarrassed and frustrated actually very quickly. And that actually happened to me at our last location we shot at. And that was it was difficult, because that's not how it should be, in my opinion. There's a time and place for that, but this wasn't it.
Yeah, I actually have to agree with you. I mean, I think for true investigators is more like a calling, like something just draws you into it, and you can't turn that off. No matter what you think you want to do in your life, just it kind of draws you to it. So I full-heartedly believe that.
I'm happy to hear that, because you wonder sometimes. You wonder more and more. I mean, and the thing is, it's like, I get that if people are listening and they don't know me, they'll probably be like, well, you have a website, you're doing this web series, you're doing all this stuff. I mean, but I could be misconstrued, I could be wrong, but to me, it's like, I want to tell a story. But what I do in my day job is I help people tell stories. And so I want to tell a story. And once again, that story isn't about me. It's about the places we go to. When we go to these places, the web series is broken up into two pieces. One is the history of the place, the people who work there, why it's important to them, and then the other is the investigation. Do you mind if I talk about the Palmer House real fast?
Certainly, go right ahead. Yeah.
So, I mean, as a good example of this is at the Palmer House. First of all, they didn't know me from anyone, and they were very open and very kind and allowed Nicole and I to come in and gave us full access to the property. Now, if anyone who doesn't know what the Palmer House is, it's a hotel in Sauk Center, Minnesota, that in October was voted by USA Today as the #1 haunted hotel in the country. And that's a pretty big deal. And you go there, and it lives up to its name. It's a beautiful place. It's well taken care of, good staff, nice people. You get there, and all we wanted to do is we wanted to be able to hear their story, their individual stories, the staff like Shar and Kara, and like what is it there that evokes them. But the other side to it was that, if you've ever seen the Ghost Adventures episode of the Palmer House, or if you've ever seen my Ghost Stories episode of the Palmer House, they talk about like something dark that lives in the basement, something evil, something that's taking over the owner and whatnot. And I obviously can't speak to it, but we went in there with, I think, and Dominic, I don't know how you do it, but I go in with setting my intentions. It's setting the intention isn't going in there like, I want to kick some ass and I want to hold these spirits accountable for all the harm they're doing. It's like we're going into people's houses. Basically these spirits live here. They love the staff who work there love these spirits. There's Annie, and there's Lucy, and there's other ones, and they just absolutely love them. So we go in there with respect, and right away I know that once our stuff comes out, it may not be as riveting as other things, because we're not going after demons. We're not going after dark entities. We go in there and just want to communicate, and it's worked out really well for us.
No, I actually, the expo that we had this past year, one of my old investigators that I've been working with, he's been more of like a provoker. And yeah. I've tried to say to him numerous times, I go, you don't need to do that. I go, if you treat him with respect, you treat him with pure kindness, there are people in the past, you'll get better communication. And I actually literally proved it that night of the expo. We went into a room and I just had a voice recorder, did burst sessions, and literally you could feel something was around you and the responses were coming right back through. And all I was doing was just talking, just saying, hi, my name's Dominic. It's a pleasure to meet you. Treat them with the same courtesy you would anyone else that is alive. And
absolutely.
It definitely changed his aspect after that.
Absolutely. And I will go head to head with anyone who disagrees with that. I really will. To me, there's no reason for it. Even going into a place that is known to be, and since I'm on camera, I could do it, demonic. Who knows what that really means, and who knows if that's actually demonic? But it's a word that's so easily thrown around. It doesn't hurt to have some sort of politeness to your approach, and we've done it that way everywhere we've gone. And only one place did it start getting a little scary, and we dealt with it because we know how to deal with it. So it wasn't it. And the thing is, too, it's like when I went to Villisca, I certainly was provoking. And that was before really got into this groove of things, before I met and partnered with Nicole, who, you start working with people who really know what they're doing and you just learn from them. And so, but at Villisca, this is why you have attachments. This is why you get some of the evidence that we'll play later. A couple pieces are from Villisca, and it kind of shows a little bit of why you provoke. It provokes back a little bit.
Yeah, I firmly believe. I had a close friend of mine. She goes, the energy in which you put out is energy which you receive. If you put negative energy out, you're going to get negative energy back.
Absolutely.
So I firmly believe that. And I know you're a huge fan of spirit boxes, and actually the next question is, what is your viewpoint on things like spirit boxes? So if you'd like to get a little more in depth in it.
I like the idea. First, I alluded to it a little bit earlier when I first started getting back into the paranormal stuff, started watching these shows. The one piece of evidence that really hit me was the spirit box, because it was immediate communication, which I think is a really interesting thing, that you could have an immediate conversation with a spirit or whatever else that's trying to communicate with you. And once you get those intelligent responses, that's great. Now, the thing is, and I was just having a conversation on some Facebook chat over a couple days ago about a friend of mine was asking what kind of spirit box she should get starting out. And I know that a lot of people don't agree with me on this, but I still believe the simplest one that you can get is the PSB7, which is the mass-produced one. I still get a lot of great responses from it, and once again, I will defend that box. But that also means, though, I've been collecting a lot of the other shack hacks and other things, and I've had a couple custom build boxes for me. I have an Andres box, which is this beautiful old time radio wood looking thing that you can kind of see in the chair right behind me. And I have a bunch of other old radios that have been converted to spirit boxes, and you use them, and they're absolutely phenomenal. There's one box that we're going to hear a couple pieces from that I think is, once again, outstanding evidence. It's not the PSB7, it's an old Sangene, and have some really, really strong responses from it.
All right. And then the next question I had for you is, what about Ouija boards? What's your viewpoint on Ouija boards?
I personally don't really care for them all that much, but the funny thing about that is that I've listened to a lot of people talk. There's an expert on Ouija boards that I've heard on some radio shows, and I'm sorry, I can't think of his name. Also, Jeff Belanger, who there is a that their thought is using a spirit box is no different than using a Ouija board, which I think there's some fairness to that question. The difference, though, I think to that also could be that the Ouija board is sold at Target. You know, it's sold in where kids buy games. They can buy it very easily. They've made the Ouija board look much more friendly in some areas, and so I think you have to be very careful with such things. Whereas like a spirit box, yeah, you can get it off of Amazon, but you kind of have to know what you're looking for to be able to get it. That makes things a lot different. But I do a Ouija, but I need to do it with somebody who is an expert at it, and that's not me. That's not me at all, and I'm a little frightened of it. I'll be honest.
I think it was Robert Mulch. I think
you're absolutely right. That's exactly who it was. Yeah. Thank you.
And
then, real fast, I see on the chat that Aaron said that I didn't know there was a difference between ghost boxes between the PSB7 in the beginning, and I think the thing is like when people are harsh on the PSB7, it's keep in mind, I think like a lot of us, we didn't know of any other boxes. We didn't know that people were taking radios and hacking them and doing all sorts of cool things with it. And yeah, now we get into deeper into the culture, and yeah, we see that these people have this, and that makes all the difference. But at first, it doesn't. And I had an immediate affinity to the spirit box from the first day that I tried it. I got nothing but a strong conversation with a man named Nate Lund in the place where I work, which was a building that was built in 1916. We're in the basement. It's an old building, and we're down there, and every response is his voice, and then it switches to a female voice, and they're all intelligent responses. It's the very first time I used it, and I've always had a natural affinity to that box. And I also kind of feel like that as a paranormal investigator, and Dominic, I'd be interested in your opinion on this. I think we can have kind of some sort of attachment to objects. You know, we have some sort of that we really like to use the same thing over and over again. And so I have this PSB7 that rest of the ITC community looks at and they're like, "Oh my God, are you kidding me? We want to take you seriously." But it's like I have a lot of there's a lot of loyalty to it because it's done so well for me. And before I came on the scene, paranormal groups in Minnesota, a few of them, not all of them, I'm not going to say all of them, but a few of them were not using it at all. And I started to hang out with them and stuff, and more times than not, they'd look at me and go like, "We've never gotten these kind of responses from a spirit box before," and every time I was just using a PSB7.
Yeah, I mean, I've actually personally gotten some slack from a lot of individuals about the spirit box stuff. You know, you're buying Google apps or stuff like that. And I mean, I've used the Echo Box numerous times. And I have persistently gotten the word love to come out of it. And I've asked tons and tons of investigators, and all of them say, yeah, we don't get that word to come out of it. And then, there's other applications out there, the Ghost Hunter apps, the Extreme Senses. The Extreme Senses with the Phasma box blew me away. One night when I go, let me try a loud test, and I just talked louder, and I go, wake up and smell and I said it extremely loud and clear as day. It comes through and it goes, roses? And I was just like, okay, it works.
That's awesome.
Holy shit. But
and that's those kinds of responses that gives you chills too.
Yeah. I mean, it's I like the idea of a spirit box to an extent, and I also have my my quarrels with it, because I really do think some of them it is pareidolia that we're getting, but a lot of times I think if we can figure out the right pitch, the right microphone, or the right frequency to have it play through a speaker, it doesn't necessarily have to be a radio playing. I think we're going to get responses.
Yeah, and that's interesting, because I'm trying to be very careful with the stuff that we call it as evidence, to make sure that it isn't pareidoia, and it's not just something that kind of sounds like two syllables came in, or it's easy to get kind of caught up in your own, like, oh, I think that was my name. I think they keep saying my name. And it's tough, because it sounds like it, but it's like, come on, really? And so, yeah, I mean, I think it's important that you just kind of share it with people. And, like, there's a lot of stuff that I don't even include, because it's just like, well, that can't be what that is. That really doesn't sound like it's close, but it's not very much like it. And even the stuff that I end up saying, this is definitely what this says, I still get people saying, well, no, I don't think so. And that's cool. I mean, I have no problem with people having a difference of opinion.
Oh yeah.
It's just my take on what I hear, and doesn't necessarily mean that I am 100% right. But I do feel like the stuff that I'm including, calling it as evidence, to me is pretty powerful stuff. That means, I really stand behind it. Powerful stuff is too powerful of a term for that, but you get my drift.
I will never forget last year going to Rolling Hills. We're out in the car, plugging in the voice recorder. We're going to listen to this. And my buddy turns on the car. We were listening to FM radio. We were listening to rock and roll, FM radio. He turns on the radio, and the radio comes on. It's on AM. And clear as day, he goes, Dom, you're still here? Through the radio in the car.
Wow.
Okay. He turns to me and goes, yeah, man, we're still here. And I'm like, dude, I didn't say that. He's like, what? And we just both look at each other. And I mean, really, after that was my, solidification for Spirit Box completely, because it doesn't matter what radio you're using, whether it's a car radio, whether it's a portable radio, it doesn't matter. I mean, at that point, we're in a location. It was on AM radio, just straight fuzz, and clear as day. Dom, you're still here,
and it wasn't sweeping.
No. Not at all.
Wow.
It was on a standalone station.
That's great.
And is there certain devices or applications? Have you dabbled with some of the applications, like the Spirit Box applications, EchoVox, or Ghost Hunter apps, or Extreme Senses?
Yeah, I've
like
worked with.
You talked about the K2 meter as well earlier. I mean, is there certain devices, applications you feel work better than others?
I do like the EchoVox. I haven't mastered it as well as other people. We've gone to places, and it seems like more of the negative stuff comes from the EchoVox. Whenever I talk, I remember at Villisca, I was when I said something to asked a spirit a question, the response from the EchoVox was, "You are a disease," and that was like, well, that was nice. And then other places, everywhere I've gone, it's like, go away, leave us alone, that sort of thing. Always through the EchoVox. I'm not really quite sure why, but at least it shows that it works. But I also like I like using a Novelist. I like I have an Ovilus 4, and I'm not a huge fan of it. I know there's a Ovilus 5 out there, and I might get that. The Ovilus, I was out in LA last year, and a friend and I went up into the mountains of Azusa, and we did investigation outside, and we used the Ovilus out there. and suddenly 3 words came out of the obelisk, and it was heart, day, and harvest. And we're like, oh, what does that mean? It's like kind of with obelisk, sometimes you kind of be like, well, let's try to figure out how we can fit this in so it makes sense. And that's one of those things you got to be careful about. But they were like, well, heart day, as it happened when I was out there, it was February 14th, 2015. It was Valentine's Day. So it's heart day. And then suddenly harvest, I was like, well, what on earth does harvest mean? I don't get it. And suddenly it's like, oh, I get it now. I totally get it. And then I realized I'm wearing this hoodie that I'm wearing right now, and on it, it actually says harvest. And that's what it was. It was talking directly to us, and that was pretty neat. And that doesn't always happen with a novelist, but when it does, it's pretty cool. And that was a great usage of it. Sometimes you get absolute garbage out of it too. At least you don't know what it says. At least, as far as apps, I haven't used a whole lot of apps. I know Nicole uses a kind of a app that's kind of a novelist, and she's had some great results with it. I just figured I paid so much damn money for that obelisk. I'm going to use that obelisk until it breaks, and then hopefully get something better.
All right. And then what would you say you would feel is the worst thing you ever came across in the field? Whether it's paranormal or even networking wise.
I think it kind of once again goes back to what we had talked about. It is kind of the networking thing. It's like sometimes you wonder, do people really care if you're doing anything? The fact that you've allowed me onto your show. I mean, it's really kind, and I appreciate it. And that's I'm hoping to be able to see if you can come on to my show. It's like, to me, it's like we're kind of in this together, and it shouldn't necessarily be one person trumping another, but it's healthy competition. When you're getting that spirit box communication, that's roses. That's pretty cool. It makes me wish that I could do that. Or Nicole and Clarissa in Seattle getting the Bible pages turning out in Seattle. That stuff is like, I wish I could do that, but I'm happy for them because they were able to do something and they are forwarding the field. When it's people who are just not, they don't care, or they're only in it for themselves, that's the thing that frustrates me quite a bit. And quite honestly, I'm being told by close friends and stuff, just put your head down and do, we just need to do what we're doing because we're not doing this for any kind of notoriety or anything, and I just need to follow that because I keep my head up because I'm curious what everyone's doing, but at the same time it's just like, well, okay, selfie. People who are taking pictures of themselves with their hands crossed looking all badass, I can't look badass. I wear a hoodie. That's just not going to happen. So maybe it's more jealousy on that part, but it's once again, it's like, can't we just be about the investigations and sharing information and take the ego out of it?
Right. No, I definitely I've seen it. I mean, I've been investigating probably about 8 years, but I didn't really come out publicly with our investigating, to be a little more professional on an aspect till probably a couple of years ago, and just things that have occurred are crazy. I mean, I can't put it any lighter than that. Yeah,
no, absolutely. This year is really my first year of really back from, I think, March of 2015 till now is the first time I really ever put my hat in the arena, so to speak, of like, hey, I exist and I'd like to be a part of things. And I shouldn't complain because it's been an amazing year also. But at the same time, it's just like you see stuff that you just really expect. And it's just like, okay, I just need to focus on the stuff that is really cool. And once again, I'm living in a community of strong paranormal friends. So I have that at least, and we all have that, and it's a good support group. So it's a good area, and I hope that if people who are getting into paranormal fields, they look to whoever else is around also and make friends and share your information.
And the last question I have for you is one I always love to ask everybody. what is your theory of why or how a ghost exists?
It's this is a really good question. I've never really thought about it. I've told people that are you familiar with like Photoshop, Adobe Photoshop?
Okay, yeah.
And you have a file, and within that file, you have multiple layers that make up your image, and some you can make disappear, some that you can show or whatever. I kind of think our existence is kind of like that a little bit, where we have these layers, and it's pretty cool. Why ghosts exist. I've never really thought about it a whole lot until my dad passed away in June last year, and start thinking about, well, where is he then? Where does he fit into all this? And I think it still also falls in the whole idea that spirits will stick around because they're either afraid of what's waiting for them. I think that people are the ones who make up their own future as a spirit. If you believe that there's a hell, and you believe that you were not good and that you're going to hell, I think you're going to create a hell, and you can't help yourself. And people are afraid to pass over because they're afraid of what's waiting for them. But it's really it's anyone's guess, really. I mean, it's who knows. I mean, that's the exciting thing, is kind of like we're all gonna find out at some point, and hopefully it doesn't suck, really.
All right, and that was the last question I had for you. I typed in the chat as well. If anybody has any questions, feel free to ask any questions. And if you'd like, let's go through some of the evidence that you had.
Sounds good to me. So, excuse me, I'm dying from a flu, which means that I might find out about this whole afterlife thing much sooner than I expected. I took my temperature right before I came on the air here, and I'm still at 100. And that's actually kind of frightening, because I've been sick now since last Tuesday. So this is not quite right. And I saw someone on Friday, and now I'm going to have to go again because it's persisting, which is kind of scary. So I gave you a bunch of spirit box evidence that I picked up, and once again, this is the same sort of thing that we talked about before. Is like, this is what I think this stuff sounds like, but it doesn't necessarily mean that is what it is. But I feel pretty confident in what it is. The first one I'd like to play, and how do you want me to do it? Do you want me to introduce it and then you play the file?
Yeah, that's fine. Okay.
So the first one I want to do is MN 056, and this is from a Sanjin DT200VX that I got and have subsequently lost at a location, which I'm hoping to get back at some point.
And now
this is the one
MN 056, right?
Yep.
Okay.
And so this was done at a private residence, and the first thing I get out of this is what I consider it saying is, go away.
All right, let's go ahead and try and play this, and I'll try to play it twice for everybody. All right, I believe that played. It was very short, wasn't it?
It was short, and now I don't hear it, right?
No.
Okay. But yeah, it's to me, it's very much like a go away, just and I did. No, I didn't actually. So next up is this one. I think it's a little bit harder to get what it is, and I hope I'm not spoiling it for people by telling them what I'm thinking this stuff is saying, but I don't really know a better way, since we're kind of all just listening and stuff, and I know that you shouldn't really lead people into saying, well, this is what it says, so then they hear it, but that's exactly what I'm going to do. This is one I got, same place, and one of my favorite questions, and Dominic, is there always certain questions that you like to ask when you're doing spirit box sessions?
Yeah, I would say there is, for sure.
So one of mine is I always like to know how many spirits are in the room, and the night that I was doing this, I think that the spirits were in a very sarcastic, very kind of either playful or nasty mood. And so what I get is I ask how many spirits are in this room, and you get this kind of sing-song, almost like it's part of the radio waves, and the response is million.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and play that real quick.
Sure.
Can I get a number of how many spirits are in this room with me right now? Can I get a number of how many spirits are in this room with me right now? Can I get
Right, and I played that a couple times for everybody.
Cool. And so that was it's one that I like. It's very sarcastic, and I like to think that it's playful, and I have no problem with playful. It's when you get to other ones that this one's a little bit longer, and I call this one it's MN 015, and I call this one the name.
Okay.
And so what basically this is at Villisca, and we went up to the attic of the house, and the attic, you think of the attic like, I think of the attic as like the very top of the house. But if anyone's been to Villisca, you know that what they call the attic is actually on the same level as the parents' bedroom and the kids' bedroom. So when you think about the story of Villisca, which is an axe murderer, is purported to have snuck into the house when everyone was at church and hid in the attic, meant that he was hiding on the same floor as most of the family that were in the house at that point, which makes it even more frightening. There isn't a lot of room in this house, and he's been sitting in this house for hours waiting. And so we go into this attic, and we are provoking, and it's not good, and we're not getting anything out of the spirit box or anything. So we go back to the parents' bedroom, which is right there, and we start provoking even more. And what you're going to hear is suddenly you hear Greg, which is my name. Once again, it's all about me. And so I'm like, okay, you said someone say my name. Everyone looking around like, nope. And Greg to me, it doesn't sound like it's coming from the spirit box. And then I said, well, you know my name, but what is yours? And the response I get is, and people have said that they don't know if they believe it or not. To me, it sounds like Satan. So I'd like you to take a listen to this.
All right, and we're going to go ahead and play that, everybody.
Greg? What?
Is my name?
You said my name. What is your name? Greg? What?
Is my name?
You said my name. What is your name?
All right, and I had that play through a couple times. And as you can see in the chat, they're all...
Yeah. No, it's one of my favorite pieces, and please know that there is not 1 ounce of me that believes that that was really Satan. Okay, I mean, we all know that there are spirits that want to mess with you. They want to frighten you, and they'll do whatever they think they need to do to be able to do that. So, but that's a funny thing about it. It's like, dude, you're not Satan. Knock it off. And I cut off the audio before I kind of go into that tirade, because it's like, you're not scaring us. Don't do it. It's when my heart started to feel like that someone grabbed it and started piercing, like pushing it. That's when I got a little scared. That's the only time I've actually been physically attacked, and was at Villisca that night. The next one, I want to play one more from Villisca, and this is one that I had forgotten about at the time of recording, but you listen to it, and you listen to me after it, and I clearly am obsessed with getting a name, because that's what I'm asking about. It was earlier in the evening, though, and the response that we get is a full sentence, and it's 6 people killed. And it's interesting because it's not 6 people that were killed at Flisco, it's actually 8. But, do I have that right? Yeah, I think I have that right. But it's still, to me, it's very clear. And actually, after I hear it, and I heard it live, I said, "Oh God!" I got sick to my stomach when I heard it, and you can actually start hearing it being said again. So 6 people killed.
We're still looking for a name. Give us a name. 6 people killed. That's what this just said.
What? 6 people killed?
Killed. We're still looking for a name. Give us a name. 6 people killed. That's what this just said.
What? 6 people killed?
Killed.
All right, and that one just played as well.
Cool. Do we have time for a few more?
Yeah, yep.
Cool. Because there's a couple that I really like, and let's go to something a little bit more lighter. Like we said, it's not all about scary stuff. It's all about getting some cool interaction with spirits. And we went to a place called Strawberry Point in Iowa, and this was a couple years ago. And I brought my friend Freddie, who I worked with. And Freddie's just this fun-loving guy. He's not into the paranormal. We ended up meeting this woman at a bar. I mean, this isn't a seedy story, but it does kind of sound that way when we started. We met her at the bar because she heard that we're paranormal investigators, and she's like, "Well, you can't come to my house because it'd scare the hell out of you." I'm like, "Let's try it." A lot of back and forth, and we ended up going to her house, and we did a spirit box session there. And one of the first questions that we asked was, I introduced Freddie in the room and asked if any spirits would say his name. And we get this wonderful voice that says, Freddie. And what's even cool about that is we all respond to it. We think it's great. And then you hear this younger girl in the background that just says, cool. It's really fun.
And which file was that one?
That would be MN, let's see, what is that? MN 0014, please.
14, okay. And
The other guy in here is named Freddie. Could you please say Freddie's name to validate that you are listening to us? You hear that? The other guy in here is named Freddie. Could you please say Freddie's name to validate that you are listening to us? You hear that?
Alrighty, and I'd like to actually kind of switch a little bit to some things real quick.
Sure.
If you could let everybody know how they can find you, also, how they can get a hold of you,
Sure.
some of your upcoming projects, all those type of things.
Yeah, no problem. My upcoming project is having my temperature down to 98.6 again sometime. But beyond that, I think what I'm going to try to do is you can get a hold of me. I'm on Facebook, Greg Bakum. Feel free to reach out to me there. Also, there is a Minnesota GhostBox Facebook page. And then we have all of this evidence and more on www.mn-ghostbox.org. And there's all sorts of great things there and a lot more spirit box evidence, and we're adding more all the time. I'm working on this web series that we're hoping to launch with the Palmer House being the first episode at the end of March. We're working on that feverishly. And there's a lot of stuff going on, and I haven't actually done any proper investigating since December. So we're going to start lining up stuff again, and I'm just really excited to get back out there and try out some of the 15 new spirit boxes that I've received since I've last done any kind of investigating.
And I'm going to check real quick. I did see there was a couple questions, but more or less it was kind of a question is why do we call ourselves ghost hunters? But I mean that's kind of a one of those questions that can be discussed in a very long discussion of why, paranormal investigators, ghost hunters, parapsychologists. I mean, there's so many different terminologies for what everybody likes to be called within the field.
Absolutely.
I'd like to thank Greg for coming on, and I'd like to thank everybody for viewing. And if you guys have any questions, I do have his information down in the description below. You can find Greg on Facebook. You can find his website, and all that is in the description below this video. And I would like to thank Greg so much for coming on.
Thank you very much.
It was a pleasure getting to talk to you and letting everybody get to know you a little bit.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. It was fun.
And I look forward to trying to find a project to work with you on. Honestly,
I would love it.
So
I would love it, and I travel. So if you guys have any fun investigations out in your area, if I have any out here, I'll let you know.
I will definitely keep you posted with all that. And
Cool.
I do see one question that maybe might want to answer is: have you used the PSB 11?
I saw the one that said, "Are you a hack?" No, that's not the one I'm going to answer. No, there's not a question like that. No, I don't use the PSB 11. I've tried, and I don't really care for it all that much. I just personally find the PSB 7 to be a much more concise, small package. I don't need multiple sweeps going in multiple directions. I know it works for some people, and that's great. It just hasn't been my thing.
But I appreciate you coming on, and everybody have a beautiful night. And I will catch you later on during the week. Don't forget Thursdays and Fridays. We have our shows 10 p.m. to 11 p.m. Live Spirit Frequencies and then Spirit Box Weekly. And we'll be on next Sunday with another interview with the Ghost Hunter. So everybody have a great night. And hope you enjoyed the show.